He thought the bells on his cap would protect him. Then the hall went quiet, and the king didn't smile. Tonight, we slipped behind velvet ropes into rooms where truth wore motley, and laughter was a dangerous currency. We'll follow the stories, some documented, some legendary, of jesters who misjudged their audience, offended the wrong king, and learned just how thin a fool's license could be. You'll meet Triblet of France, whose famous answer, some sources say, bent death himself. You'll hear how Archie Armstrong lost a kingdom's tolerance with a sentence or two. We'll open the burlesque book of Francisco de Zuniga in Spain, step into the worried eyes of Poland Stanzik, and stand beside Will Summers as he made Henry VIII breathe again. And we'll ask, when does a joke become treason? What happened when a jester insulted the wrong king? Sometimes the axe, more often the door. Always a silence you could feel on your tongue. The license of folly. In courts from Burgundy to Beijing, a fool's costume, bells, bright panels, the merit wasn't just theater. It was armor you could hear. Armor that clinked, laughed, and asked permission to prick the balloon. Picture the winter feast. The hall steams with breath and roasted meat. Wax drips like tears from torches. A figure in motley slips between elbows and flagons. A jingle at every step. The joke is coming. The room leans toward it like flowers to light. Natural fools, people prized, and too often exploited for their innocence or difference. Shared space with artificial fools, trained performers whose wit was a blade. The merit, the little puppet scepter, gave cover. You insulted with a doll's mouth and a painted smile. You could always say it wasn't me. But license is never free. It's borrowed, stamped with a monarch's face, redeemable only while the laughter pays. Who held the receipt? The king. Some courts ritualized reversal. In Europe, the feast of fools inverted rank, just for a day. Priests paraded donkeys. Choir boys became bishops. But the game had rules. Joy was supervised. And the rest of the year, fools walked a painted line, so thin you could mistake it for a crack. The fools' jobs were many. Puncture vanity, report gossip without being called a spy, distract a dangerous temper, and yes, sometimes speak the truth everyone else had suffocated in their throats. The key? Timing. Who was listening? Who needed a laugh? Who needed to see that the king could be mocked safely? Because a bad joke isn't just a bad joke in a palace. It can be an earthquake. It can make enemies look at each other and nod. It can make a king feel naked. A naked king in a hall full of enemies is the most dangerous creature you will ever meet. The stories that survive, polished, retold, embroidered, cluster around moments when that thin skin tore. When the fool believed his bells were a shield and discovered they were a target. One tale, especially, survives because it's too perfect to forget. Our path bends first to France, rooms heavy with velvet and perfume, toward a joke that met the edge and smiled. From permission to penalty, Triblet. The name rings like a laugh in a corridor. He served Louis XII and Francis I in the early 16th century. Witty, biting, sometimes cruel. Some sources say he was physically deformed, a natural fool with piercing clarity. Others paint him as a razor-tongued professional. The truth may be both, blurred by time. The famous story arrives in a gulp. One night at court, Triblet crosses the wire. Maybe he mocks the queen. Maybe, some sources say, he slaps Francis on the backside and bolts, cap jingling, giddy with his own audacity. Either way, the laugh misfires. The room freezes. Francis doesn't roar. The eyes do the roaring. He weighs Triblet like a man choosing knives. The verdict hangs in the air, and then it lands. The fool will die. A lifetime of license, revoked in a sentence. Begging floods the floor. Triblet pleads for mercy. The king, amused or curious, offers a single concession. Choose the manner of your death. Sire, the jester says, I choose to die of old age. The line is so clean it feels carved. The court exhales. Laughter breaks like surf. And the king, some sources say, lets him live, banishing him instead. The joke buys a life. Did it happen? Historians caution that the anecdote has worn a groove like a favorite coin. It shines because it's been handled. Triblet is documented. Yes, the line perhaps less so. But legend can be a lens. Even if we set the tale in quotation marks, it tells a truth. We could pull you back from the ledge once. Other stories attach themselves to him like burrs. Triblet, scolded for insulting the queen, is told by Francis to apologize. He bows and says, I will, if your majesty first banishes the person who led me astray. Who should I banish? The king asks. The devil, Triblet says, for tempting me to speak truth. Presumption masquerading as penance. The French court of Francis, I was a stage. Humanist thinkers, foreign ambassadors, rivals in silk. Triblet thrived there because speed mattered. You had half a breath to read the mood, half a sip of wine to measure the company. Miss, and you felt the floor drop away beneath your shoes. In one telling, after the old age reprieve, the king warned Triblet, one more misstep and the gallows. Clean lines have a way of blurring, and fools specialize in blurs. Did he step back from the brink? He disappears from the record like a bell swallowed by snow. The point is not to prove or disprove a punchline. It's to feel the machinery around it. A joke can be a key, sliding into a lock you didn't know was there. It can also be a spark dropped near silk. Triblet's legend has survived because it weighs both in a single breath. Across the channel, the bells still jingle, but the weather changes. Under one king, body tolerance. Under another, a thin, dangerous quiet. Archibald Archie Armstrong, Scott, sharp-tongued, a professional fool, served James VI an eye, then his son Charles I. Under James, the court was theatrical, recursive in its jokes. Under Charles, everything pulled tight. Religion sharpened every word. Archie arrived with a gift for the one-line puncture. He mocked favorites to their faces, tugged at pretensions, and pricked the king with affection. This is a dangerous art. You must cut but not bleed. You must be needed. The trouble point comes in 1637. Records dry but damning. Say Archie gave scandalous and offensive speeches, especially about Archbishop William Laud and the Scots, as church and crown try to force prayer books and uniformity north. The room for mischief shrank to a tight box. A jester's license may allow you to mock your master. It rarely allows you to mock the master's most volatile project. Charles I was wagering the kingdom on religious policy. Archie's jibe. Some sources say he called the Scots a proud, disobedient people, and Laud worse, touched the live wire. The response was cold, clinical. Charles banished Archie from court. The Star Chamber stripped him of his little crest. Yes, even fools collected heraldry by then, and the bells went still. Not beheading, not a dungeon, a door, and behind it silence. Imagine that silence. A man who had measured his days by ripples of laughter, exiled to rooms where no one looked up when he entered. Did he deserve it? Depends which side of the joke you stand on. But the lesson is clear. A king's temper is not the only temper at court. Church and faction can be kings, too. Under James, Archie reportedly joked about the Spanish match and lived. Under Charles, the air quivered. A look at a different wall hanging, and your old joke sour. The wrong king is sometimes the same king on a different day. Some sources say Archie later ran in near London, old and a little bitter, collecting coins instead of chuckles. He watched the country slide towards civil war. Did he wonder whether silencing the court's pressure valve had made the boiler rattle harder? What changed? Not the craft. The context. Under strain, power hears jokes as diagnosis, not diversion. If the diagnosis offends, the doctor is shown out. South to Spain, where a jester's blade wasn't just his tongue. It was a pen dipped in acid. In the enormous apparatus of Emperor Charles V, a world of German knights, Spanish grandees, Italian courtiers, lived a fool named Francisco de Zuniga. He didn't keep his jokes to corridors. He wrote them down. His Chronica Burlesca del Emperador Carlos V is a carnival mirror, warped but revealing, of court life. He named names. He teased not just personalities, but systems. Patronage, pilfered stipends, the slow greed of the mighty. This was not safe. Some say Charles V tolerated Francisco as a pressure valve, the way a ship captain listens to a creak in the hull to know where to look. Others suspect the emperor simply enjoyed him, the way we enjoy a wicked roasted dinner, only to regret it later. The fool's portraits we know, from Velázquez a century later, often showed dwarfs, buffoons, entertainers held in uneasy honor. Francisco's portrait is verbal, nasty, particular, unsparing. He mocked the emperor's German courtiers, the shameless, the pious greedy. Like all satire, his book made a list of enemies. The end of Francisco's story is a fog with sharp edges. He was expelled from court. Some sources say he was murdered on the road around 1541. Ambushed, stabbed, a laugh finally answered with steel. Others place his end later, his foes choosing slow revenge. The records disagree. The fear rings true. Notice how different this is from Archie's legal shunning. Here, power wears a hood, not a robe. A king's delight can shelter you. A noble's grudge, sooner or later, will not. If you read the Chronica Burlesca, you taste the appeal. He makes you feel smarter than the powerful. That's the drug jester's deal at court. The dose must be exact. Too much, and the patrons remember they are the ones buying. Velázquez buffoons, painted with startling dignity, remind us of the cost of professional amusement. These weren't cartoons. They were men who walked, daily, into rooms where a look could end them. In Francisco's case, the room came with him, book in hand, wherever he went. North and east, to Poland, to a jester who looks less like a clown and more like a conscience. Stanzik served Sigismund I the Old in the early 1500s. The image we carry of him comes from an 1862 painting by Jan Matejko. Not a prankster, but a man alone, face folded with worry, while the court's ball whirls on behind him. The story behind the canvas is a wartime telegram. News has arrived of Smolensk's fall to Muscovy, 1514. The court still dances. Stanzik sits with a letter. He knows what it means. Power loves a party. History insists on the bill. The tales of Stanzik show wit aimed at policy, not people. He jabbed at choices, not bodies. That is one way to survive. Make the joke about the weather, not the man. You can scold the wind and live. Still, nothing is safe forever. A jester's value rises when a king can hear warning as entertainment. It drops when the king hears warning as insult. Stanzik, by reputation, threaded that needle. He was less a mirror than a barometer. Some sources even cast him as a proto-statesman, an idea more 19th century dream than 16th century fact. The myth says something honest, though sometimes the only man in the room permitted to look afraid is the fool. From worried Poland to roaring Tudor England, where a gentle jester learned when to soften a lion's jaw. Will often Summers, serve Henry VIII, the king who broke with Rome, married and remarried, and sent great men to the block, kept a soft spot for a kind-eyed fool. Will's jokes read light on the page, gentle tugs at the king's waistline, soothing quips during black moods. Yet lightness is not weakness. It is a measured force. To make Henry laugh at himself was to nudge a cliff away from crumbling. Some accounts say Summers spoke up for the powerless, asking for pardons or easing punishments with a well-placed jest. If true, that made laughter a bridge, not a sword, a rope across a gap. He served long, into Edward VI's reign, perhaps glimpsed even under Mary I. This too is a lesson. A fool's survival depends less on his own wit than on the temper of a line of monarchs. Staying funny is hard. Staying safe is harder. Notice how different Will's art was from Francisillo's. Where Francisillo scalded with names, Will calmed with tone. Where Archie stabbed, Will stitched. The safer path? Not always. A kind joke in the wrong room can sound like mockery, but a kind man has more doors he can walk through. There's an ethics to jesting. Punch up, not sideways. Mock the policy, not the powerless. Read the room and read the hour. A joke that saves a life at noon can cost one by midnight. And remember, the wrong king may be the right king with the wrong witnesses. Courtiers, priests, favorites, wives. Every ear changes the risk. Every shadow is a judge. Some sources suggest Ottoman jesters risked death for cracks about piety. Russian holy fools survived Ivan the Terrible only by the shine of sanctity. Chinese wits were jailed when wordplay slipped into insolence. The pattern isn't perfect, but the rhyme is loud. The punishment? The axe is famous, but the door is common. Banishment, dismissal, the slow erasure of a man who once filled rooms with noise. And sometimes, on a quiet road, a reckoning without a herald's trumpet. Before we close, one more legend-laced scene. Back to France, because the line that saved a life has one more echo. Sire, I choose to die of old age. Why does this work so well in story if not in fact? Because it bends the rules without breaking them. It accepts the king's command while making a joke of fate itself. It makes power laugh at a mirror, and forgiving is easier when you're smiling. Some sources say Francis added a warning, and Triboulet bowed away with his life, a wiser man in the same bells. Whether or not that happened, the line has done its work for 500 years. It whispers a truth you can pocket. Sometimes the only way out is to turn the sword into a sentence. It is not a license for cruelty. It is a reminder to measure risk, to see the room, to know that laughter might open a door, but can also close it. Let's bring the hall lights up one more time and count the lessons the bells taught. Tonight, we cross courts and centuries. In France, Triboulet's legend showed us how a sentence can commute a sentence. In England, Archie Armstrong's fall mapped the shrinking space for folly in a hardening age. In Spain, Francisillo's pen proved that print remembers, and so do enemies. In Poland, Stanzik's worry made fear look like wisdom. And in Tudor England, Will Summers turned kindness into policy. What happened when a jester insulted the wrong king? Sometimes a roar and the headsman. More often a quiet decree. Always a lesson for the rest of us. Humor is a tool you borrow, not one you own. If this whispered walk through velvet halls stayed with you, if the silence before the punchline made your chest tighten, subscribe for more history told close to the ear. Tell me in the comments, which moment struck you? The stillness when a room went cold, or the laugh that saved a life? Choose your audience wisely. The crowns may look different now, but kings still walk among us.